G'day, Ben from Duck Playing Chicken here with a new build series. Back to Space Battleship Yamato 2202 series. And this is a set of Blackbirds. So you get two kits in this box of the Zero Type 52 Autonomous Unmanned Fighter. So you get both of these craft here, and of course you've got the two different colour schemes for them. So first thing first, let's take a look at what's in the box. Okay, because you get two copies of essentially the same kit, the sprues I'm about to show you, there is a duplicate of each one. So starting off with A1, it looks like we get a good part of the fuselage. You can see, as always with these kits, just a massive amount of detail they managed to pump into such a small kit. So it's fantastic. Got some more, this looks like some fuselage and some ordnance. We've got the nose, and again some other sort of smaller details. Now what's interesting about the nose of this kit is you get, of course, the duplicate, but you also get it in blue as well. So this sprue you actually get 3 copies of. We've got some engine details, stabilizers, and it comes with the sort of older style stand to put it on, but you actually get 2 versions of the new stand, which is the one with the ball joint, which means it gives you a bit more posability on the stand. As with all my Mecha Colle kits, I don't actually use the stand. I've got quite a substantial collection of these things now, so I'll make my own base and stand just because I want to light this thing up. And finally we get a sprue. It's more missiles, more ordnance. So there's quite a number of sprues in this kit. Now if we have a look at the box is the standard Mecha Colle affair, where you've got the instructions on the inside of the lid. There is some colour callouts there, and there are some options of how you can mount the missiles. So what I normally do with these boxes is I actually sort of unglue them, because it's a lot easier to read the instructions when the box is flat. So there we go, it makes life a bit easier to view it. Now as far as the colour callouts go, it looks like not a lot of colours in this one. There's sort of a couple of dark greys, there's the deep blue, so not a huge amount of colours. I will of course try to light these ones, so I think I'll be lighting up the single engine at the back. And I think that's going to be a bit of an interesting one, like if you remember back to one of the other fighters I did, I sort of drilled the back of the engine nozzle out and stuck the cone on separately, so we'll see what we can do there. So the next step is for me to start cutting out these pieces and putting this thing together, just dry fitting it before I start looking at the electronics. Alright, I've built up one of the kits, and I've built this one with the landing gear in, so when I get to showing you how they're assembled, I'll talk about the options that sort of come with this this kit, which are kind of cool and are all to do with the landing gear. So yeah, I've already built one up, but I'll take you through the process of building the other one. Now I won't be building this with the landing gear down. I want to build them so they're in flight, and when they're mounted on a post it's going to make more sense. Okay, so the first thing is to get these ordnance packs together, and these are just made up of 2 pieces, and the pegs aren't sort of centered, they're offset, so there is only one way that these things can be fitted in. There's only one way that these pieces can fit. Alright, English Ben. Okay, so we've got 2 of these, and then we start on the nose. So I've chosen the blue nose here just because it's a bit easier to see on camera. So this is made up of 2 pieces. You've got the top, and the other thing that I've done is I've just cut down those pegs a little bit. So I've just cut them on a bit of an angle, and that just means it'll be a bit easier if I need to take them apart again. So we've got this bottom part of the nose that slots in here, and you'll notice this piece here, this is where you've got the front landing gear, the landing gear on the nose. So you've got two options. Now on this one here, hopefully you'll be able to see it. You can see there's the wheel and then there's the door to the front of it. So that's why there's two slots there, so they're two optional pieces. Now for this one, I'm just going to use the piece that covers the whole lot. Make sure I get that in the right way. So it is nice they give you the option of the landing gear. I think in the original, I can't remember in the original sort of kits out of the 70s and 80s whether they actually included landing gear for some of these fighters. I don't think they did, if I remember rightly, but I could be wrong there. So that's basically the nose. You know, landing gear doors are sort of in place, and then we sandwich that on this piece here somewhere. So on the underside of the fuselage. And then we have the top part of the fuselage. So it snaps in like that. Now, what's interesting is for the top part here, they actually provide two options. So this bit sort of sits on the top here, and you've got an option. If I hold them up to the camera, you might be able to see them. So one's got the pylons for the ordnance and the other one doesn't. So you've got an option there depending on what your configuration is for the missiles you're going to load up on it. So I'm going to use this one. And again, it's a nice little touch. They give you that option. You've got numerous options on how you want to sort of set up the ordnance on it. So we've got that goes there. We've got the underbelly. And just noticed I need to trim these pegs just a little bit. So just trim them on a bit of an angle. Just means there's a little less contact with the pegs and the holes, and it just makes it a bit easier to remove them later on if I need to. So let's get this in place. Okay. So we've got that. It all sort of fits in really nicely. Now before I put the stabilizers on, just a note of this is the mounting hole for the stand that comes with it. So I'll be drilling this out just a little bit. This is I think 2.5 mil, but I need a 3 mil hole. So I'll be drilling that out a bit for the metal tube I'll use as the post. And I've got to work out how the wiring sort of goes down here. And of course, this is not the first Zero I've built. I did build the one from the previous series, and it's very similar. It shares obviously a lot of the same pieces. Let's see. Okay, so these empty areas here, again, this is for the landing gear, and if I show you the one I've built, this landing gear is really quite fiddly to get into place, but it does actually work. Like it's, you know, you can see it's sort of sitting above everything else, so it means there's no part of the craft sort of sitting on the ground. You also notice this stabilizer has got a bend in it, so if I hold it sort of like that, you can see it's got a bend in it, and so obviously they can't land the plane if they've got this thing sort of sticking, you know, sticking below the plane. So they also give you an option for, you can either have this if you've got the landing gear in place, or there's the one where it's in flight mode where it's sort of folded down. So again, it's a nice little touch for you know, how you want to set this thing up. Now what I'm going to be doing is using the pieces included to fill those gaps. So landing gear is not deployed. And just a word of advice, if you're putting these together, they sort of, the instructions are pretty straightforward, but I tend to find you want to get all the detail pieces in place before you put the top and bottom stabilizers on, just because they sort of get in the way a bit. So we've got those two panels in now, and now I'm going to look at the engine. So this piece goes in here, like that, and then this bit is actually keyed. So when you slot it on the back like that, it only goes one way. And then we have the top stabilizer. And these are all very sharp and very delicate, so just a bit of patience goes a long way with dealing with this kit. So we've got that like that. So you can see if it was going to land, that's why this folds up in place. Okay, now as far as the missile packs go, we've got this one goes somewhere like this, I think. Does it go the other way? I think it goes that way actually. Now these will have to be glued on, I think. They're not that secure when they're just pressed into place. But going to have those. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to end up doing like what they've got on the cover art here, where you got missile packs at the top and then some on the wings here. And so these bottom parts, they're just made up of two halves, and these don't actually sort of clip in. They will actually need to be glued. So there's sort of an indication of where they need to go, but they'll need to be super glued in place. I haven't yet decided whether I'm going to actually do that, because that is going to be a bit fiddly. But I think if I put them on the outside pylon, they should be alright. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. If I also just... so this is the original stand that came with the previous sort of version of the Zero. Look at it on the stand. It looks pretty good. It's a very cool looking fighter, this thing, I reckon. So yeah, it's nice that you got a few options. You can build it. You can build it in flight mode. You can build it, landed. You can change the way you want the missile packs on the wings. So yeah, really nice sort of set of options you have. Alright, next bit is for me to work out how I'm going to light this. Now I'm going to light this in a very similar way to the previous Zero I did, and I want to use a blue LED, so just something like that. And what I'm going to need to do is basically take the engine detail, remove the cone from the cowling here, and so I've got to grind all of this out. I need to make a decent hole in here to mount the LED, and then I'll use a frosted bit of clear styrene to stick the cone back onto. So basically the idea is to get a ring of light around the cone like you would expect to see. So I've got some work to do there, and I'll get stuck into it. Okay, I started work on the lighting for the engines, and this is what I've got so far. It's pretty intense, bit hard to see on the camera, but it actually looks pretty good in real life. So I'm going to take you through the process of how I sort of got to this. First of all, if I disassemble this, get a bit of an idea what's going on. So I've got the LED sort of mounted in the back of this. I've filled this up with UV resin and then put a bit of a matte coat over it. Probably needs another coat, but get the idea. And then for this bit, which normally has the cone attached to it, I've separated out the two pieces here so I can work with them individually. I've also done quite a bit of work to some of the fuselage pieces, so you can see where I've removed a lot of material there. I've sort of modified this part a bit. Again, more bits that have, I've taken more material out, and this is all just so I can have enough room to get the wiring into the post hole. So first thing first, let's talk about this bit. So you can see that the cone is stuck in there. It's a solid piece. It's got this peg on the back, and what I'm going to do first is cut off this peg, and then I'm going to take a grinding tool and grind out all the material in here until the cone sort of drops out. So let's get that grinding tool ready. Now, when you're grinding the material at the back of this piece, you want to sort of do it fairly consistently, sort of over the whole surface. And the reason for that is because there's just only a little bit sort of holding the cone in place. So if you do it consistently, you'll start to see a line appear around where the cone is, and that helps you determine that yes, you're close, and then it should just pop out. So okay, you should be able to see that circular line that's appearing in there now. That is the back of the cone, and I can feel it. It's just popped out, and you'll see now I can take this out, and there we have the separated cone. Now for the cone piece, you want it so that it's reasonably flat on the bottom, so that when I stick it to the clear resin, it sits flat. So I'm just going to take a glass file just to sort of flatten off the bottom. I can check how it stands up by itself. As long as it stands fairly vertical, it should be alright. And now for this piece, we've got all this interior material that we want to basically remove. Okay, so what you end up with is a cylinder like that, and I can just take a knife and sort of scrape out the debris. So you want it to be nice and smooth. This is part of this is going to be seen, so you want to make it as tidy as possible. Alright, the last step for this bit is to take a bit of Tamiya extra thin, and you can just brush it around the edges. Make it nice and smooth. I'll let that sit and dry for a little bit, and then we can move on to the next bit. Now this bit's a little bit more tricky than the last bit, because what we want to do is grind out this piece in here. Actually, get close to the camera. I want to grind this out, but not all the way through. So we just want it so that there's going to be a bit of an offset between the light and where the UV resin is going to come up to, because we're going to basically fill this with UV resin almost up to where that plug currently is. Okay, these are the type of LEDs I'm using. I think these are 3mm top hats, I think they're called, or something like that. But it really doesn't matter. It's just about how you can get the LED to stay in place. And these ones are a little bit bigger than the hole there, so I need to sort of grind a bit more material out here just so I can set that in place. and then hold it in place with some UV resin. So back on the grinder. Yep, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. So that's how it's going to sort of just fit in place there. Now I might just get a little bit of glue in here just to tidy that up a bit. It's not actually going to be seen, but let's just make sure there's no sort of rough surfaces interfering with everything else. Okay, to set this up for ready to fill this with resin, I'm going to get the LED in place. Make sure it's reasonably centered in there. Pretty good. Now there are some sort of gaps in here that if I fill it now with resin, it's sort of going to drip out the bottom. So what I do is literally just bog it up with a bit of blue tack. It's literally just to sort of plug that hole, and now I can go ahead and fill this with UV resin. So I'm going to use my helping hands here just to hold it in place. And you want to hold it as sort of level as possible, just so that the resin can actually set level. So this is the stuff I usually use. I don't even know if you can get this stuff anymore. I've had this stuff for a while, just from AliExpress. I'm literally going to pour it in. Now at this stage, it doesn't matter if it's got air bubbles in it or if it doesn't completely fill it. We just want a flat surface in there, reasonably flat, to rest the cone on. And the rest of it is going to work like a light pipe and help the light to disperse reasonably even. Now before I set the resin, I'm just trying to get it into all the little nooks and crannies in there. And when I'm happy with it, I can hit it with a UV light. And although this resin is sort of crystal clear at the moment, I can throw a matte coat over it, matte varnish, and that will help disperse the light a little bit more. Now because I've got quite a bit of resin in there, I want to keep the UV light on it for a while, just so it sets properly. You see it's almost like a lens over the top of it. Now I should be able to pull out the blue tack. The blue tack will be a bit gluggy just from the any resin that's touched it. So now I've got the back of it here, I can hit it with UV light again. Alright, now the next thing is to use some matte varnish in here. So again, I'm going to set it up with my helping hands here. And for this I'm just going to use some Mecha Colle matte varnish. And then I need to let that sit and dry. So of course that will dry clear, but it will be matte. So again, it's just about dispersing that light properly. Now the rest of the modifications I have to do sort of in the fuselage are just about allowing the wires to basically get to the post. So you can see on the one on the left I've already sort of removed all the material there, so I need to remove this material and this peg. Now, if any of you are worried about, me getting my fingers close to this thing, it's actually running at quite a low RPM, and it is designed for filing down nails, so it's not like an industrial grinder, that's for sure. Okay. Again, the last step is to just use some Tamiya extra thin just to smooth off all those areas that have been filed away. It's not a necessary step, but I just like to do it so there's no sort of sharp edges that are going to potentially catch on the wire. The wire I use is pretty thin, so it doesn't take much to actually break the insulation on it. Okay, so that one's ready to go. I'll let that dry. Now this is the top piece, and so you can see there's actually quite, let's get them both around the right way, and it's probably a bit easier to see what's going on. So this peg, I need to remove that completely, get rid of all this middle stuff in here, because the wire's going to need to feed through this area. So it's just a matter of taking it all off. Take it all off. And probably some of you thinking, how do I know which bits to scrape off? And when I'm first working it out as far as the lighting goes, it's very much about trial and error. So my view is, don't be afraid of cutting a few pegs off, or a few corresponding holes for those pegs, because you can always glue a model together. These are snap together kits, except the missiles. You probably want to give them a little bit of glue. I don't think they'll hold in place particularly well, but generally these Mecha Colle kits are very much a snap together sort of format. But when you're working out wiring and those sort of things, you've got the benefit of being able to glue stuff together. So you don't need necessarily all the reinforcement and all the alignment pegs, all that sort of stuff. So you just really need to work out first. I usually start with the LED, how that's going to attach and where it needs to be, and then I'll work back from there. How is the wire going to travel to the post? Now thankfully these ones are actually pretty straightforward. I mean, given this is technically it's my second and third Zero that I've put together from Mecha Colle kits. So I sort of understand how this thing goes together a bit better now than when I first built it. But it is very much about just sort of working out which way your wires need to go. How do you get them on a path that's uninterrupted? And when you're grinding off bits, as long as you don't do any grinding on the outside of what you actually see, it'll be fine. Nothing a bit of glue won't fix. Again, not a necessary step, but it's just something I like to do just to make it a bit tidier. Alright, what have I got next? Okay, this piece. So this goes underneath. This sort of sits like that, and then you've got the nose come out here. Now this is the hole where the post is going to go through. So I need to basically make sure there's a gap there that the wire can feed through and then goes sort of into the post. Now I can just clean up those edges. Once all this stuff's dry, I'll assemble it again and I can show you how this path is going to work for the wiring. Okay, I think that's... oh no, we've got one more bit we need to do. So the main part of like the wings and the fuselage, again, there's this sort of piece in the middle here. This is sort of where the post comes out. And so I need to basically cut a path here to make sure that there is no obstruction to the wire. Okay, so to give you a bit of an idea of how this sort of works, let's put this bit on. So I'm not going to worry about the nose because that doesn't matter, but you can see already how that's where the wire needs to come out. So I've got this sort of uninterrupted path coming from the back of the craft into there. You look at the top piece, again, there's sort of a gap there now that the wire can sort of flow through. Just check that's dry enough. Okay, so if I take the one I previously made and start to get an idea of how that's actually going to work. Now I'm going to end up soldering wires obviously to the prongs of the LED, but you can see how it's sort of pretty much an uninterrupted path now. And of course same thing with this bit. Once I put that on, again you can sort of get an idea that there's sort of nothing in the way of that wire now. Now, the only sort of disadvantage with doing this this way is there's no longer a peg that holds the engine in place. So I will have to glue it to the fuselage, but that doesn't bother me so much because, yeah, that'd be fairly straightforward. I've started working on the bases, so these are just clear acrylic boxes, drilled a few holes for USB socket and a switch. So just clear acrylic gift boxes, I think they're called. And you know, you can watch it just about any of my other Mecha Colle videos. I go through this in a little bit more detail. I still have to drill a hole in the top, so I'll drill a 3mm hole for, I have some 3mm diameter aluminium tube that I'll use as the stand for the ships. And I'll just cut them at two different heights just to give it a bit of variation when it's sort of sitting on the shelf. So I've got that done. I've also been trying to nut out the wiring a little bit. On this side here, I thought I'd sort of cut out enough of this, but there's this piece in the middle here that I actually need to grind out. So I'll do that now. Okay, so you can see I've sort of cut that bit out. There's now a groove there. And if we compare that to the other one, you can sort of see there's that bit of plastic that I've cut out. Alright, so now I can sort of test to see how the wires can go through. So you can see they've got pretty much a clear run. Then get this bit over the top. Hoping I should be able to pass a wire through it and out the back. Yep, there we go, and that seems to be uninterrupted, so the wire can sort of freely go through, which is good. That's a good sign. I think this little peg here, I'm trying to work out what it's doing. I may not need it. If I take this off, yeah, so there's this little peg in here. I don't think I actually need that at all, so I might cut that out. Again, don't be afraid to cut off pegs if you're going to glue a kit together. Okay. Yeah. Get this back together, and I think we should be good to go. So, looking at the engine nozzles, I had to remove the Vallejo matte varnish because it actually cracked. I put too much in there, so it was my fault. It's not a problem with the product, and it cracked. So I ended up taking it out and giving it a coat of SMS matte varnish, but I don't know how well that's sort of going to work. I think it'll be fine, but as you can see, with I've cut down the legs on the LEDs, but that should fit in there nicely. And yeah, once that's all glued in, it can be good to go. So I think I'll leave this video here. I think I've done sort of just as much of the building and modifications as I'm going to do prior to painting. So I'll clean up some of this stuff that some of this material that I've removed. I'll sort of just tidy this up a little bit more. But apart from that, I think yeah, we're pretty much ready for priming and painting. So till next video, I'll catch you later.